would you introduce yourself at the beginning?
David Young, I did say.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I missed it.
Anyway, I'm sad that there's no one here to hear the comments from the floor about the problems that we've been having with West Dorset District Council. But the second point is about unitary authority. It's not about just when it suits. You know, you can combine Weymouth and Dorchester and so on and cite an economy of scale. But seemingly we can't do that with other parts of Dorset and form a unitary authority and then say we're going to have an economy of scale, there's better purchasing direction, better and more souped up ways of tendering processes and so on, so we get a better visibility. But more than that, there's the social aspect. It's a divided feudal system where you've got Sherborne on the one hand getting what some people in Bridport might see as the golden end of the stick, while as those of us in Bridport might turn around and say the colour of the stick at the other end, which we have, is a bit less desirable.
But Vivian, we're the centre of the universe, so what do we care about Sherborne? I mean, come on.
But I think it's very important that if we're going to, and Dorset is a small, largely, except for the already unitary authorities of Poole and Bournemouth, is a rural community in the most cases. And I think that really what you need to do is, or to consider, is that part of Dorset as a whole and bring it into a unitary authority, gain the economy of scale, and put aside this feudalism that I think exists at the present time.
Okay, very good. How about over here? All right. Don't worry, Andrew. I'm not going to forget you. But
hi, I'm Tamsin Chandler. I'm just a resident of Bridport, really. I always get pretty incensed when I hear people speaking kind of self-righteously about lots of savings, and it basically reminds me of austerity, which is a system where all of the fundamental...
Hold it close to your mouth.
Hello. The fundamental, most needed services in this country have been slashed to make financial savings, and I'm actually much more interested to know where that money is going that we're racing to save across the board. It's clear. I mean, I know I've been studying the political landscape quite closely for the last 4 years. And it's not going to the people who need it. And as elected officials, public servants, I am on a daily basis quite irate about that. So I'm not so interested perhaps in hearing how many savings are being made. I'm much more interested in where that money's going, and I'd like to see it go where it's needed. And that's really all I've got
Tamsin,
to say.
Where, for example, here in Bridport, would you like to see more funding?
I'll just make a point about what was made about councillors. I know Ros personally very well, and she's one of the hardest working people I've ever come across. And what I love about Bridport, which is unfortunately, I hadn't seen these charts before, which do actually represent quite well on a national level. Don't know what happened in 2010. I like welfare. I like people having safety nets. I think people like paying tax to ensure that their community is well looked after. And I've been watching all around the country, all of those things being slashed to buggery by an extremely wealthy crop of individuals. And it enrages me. I mean, I'm actually shaking just thinking about it. I don't know. I'm not a councillor. I am someone who cares about my community and humanity. And so when I look at people that are there to represent the community, I want to see that they are capable of empathy and care. That's,
okay.
You know, I'm not...
I should introduce John, actually, because he's been the force behind the whole Public First thing. He roped me in just to embarrass myself up here in public, but he's done all the hard work. And frankly, I'm very impressed with all he's done, and I think you should give him a little round of applause. Okay, go John. What's your obsession of the night?
I think my obsession of the night has just struck me how silence is used so strongly in West Dorset District Council. There are lots of rules, lots of government rules and so on, and many of those are abided by, but it's the spirit in which it's handled that I think is totally wrong. The tripartite agreement was just mentioned. 32 Conservative councillors discussed that, or could have done, at the council meeting where there were about 6 members of the public in early January. Of those 32, how many do you think discussed and debated that from the Conservative side? I'll tell you. 2. The other 30 stayed silent, despite the cries from the other side of the House, saying, please, let's debate, let's have a debate, let's discuss it. And there's this sort of control that I think is absolutely wrong. This is why we must get that petition through and change this cabinet government into a committee government as a very first stage.
Explain your petition. What's that all about?
The petition, we require 5% under the Localism Act of 2011 to 5% of the West Dorset electoral people to sign a petition which will then lead to a referendum, and that referendum needs a simple majority in order to move us from a cabinet to a committee-style government. Just a word on the cabinet style. As you know, the leading party, for instance, gets 43% of the votes. The leader of that group can then handpick 6 colleagues, friends, politicians, whatever you call them, as the cabinet. And they basically decide everything. How the Lib Dems and how the Independents and the others keep going, I do not know. Ros has been a fantastic example of keeping going and trying to get people on the other side to talk. But silence is used an awful lot. I don't need a great wave of sympathy here, but I was banned in 2009 from ever contacting the planning department again. It was just a note that came through. Don't worry for me. Don't worry for me.
No, I think, John, they're clapping the fact you were banned. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think that's right.
What it is.
I think that's right. It was rather like getting an MBE being awarded that by West Dorset District Council, I have to say. But that's silence. That's an attempt at silence. The silence that the critical fact when the offices were built in Dorchester, the fact that when the offices went up, it would be 3 years and 1 month before when the shopping development was built, before any parking would be released in Charles Street at all. Because they'd have to build the shopping development, build the parking underneath, and only when the development was built could you use the parking. So there would have been no parking whatsoever in the whole of Charles Street. Who knew that? Any councillors? I haven't found a single councillor who knew that. Not a single retailer knew it, because I went right round Dorchester. Not a single member of the public. Why? Because it was sorted away on page 31 of a 60-page report on the internet, and it was only discovered some months later. I find that absolute deception and disgraceful. But in addition, silence was used just before the last election. 41 Conservative candidates, and I have to say, I usually vote Conservative. I didn't last time, but I do, so it's not an anti-party thing. 41 Conservative candidates were asked whether they agreed with the offices being built in Charles Street. 1 said he did believe in it. The other 40 refused to answer. Now, I don't find that democratic. I don't think that's openness. I think that's disgraceful. And the cabinet system of government enables that to happen. There's many other things that have gone desperately wrong in the offices area. The costs coming through, the amount of money given to the developer, it just goes on and on and on. But I was fine. I'll conclude by saying I was sitting in a meeting I think it was an audit and governance meeting, and the planning director leant forward over the rest of the car park, given that they built on a third of it, and he said, one of our problems is, of course, we're short of 150 car parking spaces. We were sitting on 226 of them, and they're now saying that they're going to have to dig up Roman archaeology in order to make more car parking spaces, but they can't really afford to do it. English Heritage is against it. Now, when that's going to explode through into the cabinet system, the cabinet decide it's going to happen, and all the hands go up, I don't know. But I find this is a lovely part of the world to live in, but there's a pall of fog over us, and that pall of fog is a sort of silent power that isn't democratic, and we must sign this petition, please. We must get rid of cabinet government, get it at least to committee stage, and try and get some more people having hope, because there's an awful lot of people who have lost hope.
So, John, tell these folk practically. if you want them to get a bunch of petitions signed, what do they actually have to do? There are copies of the form?
Yep, the most important thing is, please, nobody slip out without getting an envelope with 2 forms in to sign. There's 12 spaces on each sheet. You can find the internet addresses there. You can get more sheets. We're having a session of signing the petition on Saturday the 28th in Buckydew Square. Come along there. Get as many friends as you can to. We want to get this figure of whatever it is, 4,500. It hasn't yet been validated by West Dorset District Council. In fact, it's gone silent again there. No news for 5 weeks. I asked if we could meet. Absolute silence. Why is the leader of West Dorset District Council not here tonight? Why is not a single member of the executive here tonight? They are all invited. Last time in Dorchester, every single one went silent and refused to come. Tonight, every single one has refused to come. I find that an outrage.
So, okay. Thank you.